I know oftentimes as entrepreneurs and small business owners, your plate is full, but definitely taking that time to make sure that you don't burn yourself out. I know oftentimes we think we can do it all, but that eventually does lead to burnout. So just making sure that you're being conscious of how you're spending your time, you're being as productive as possible. And if you need help, then definitely seek out getting some support in your business.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs. I am so excited. We have a very, very special guest today, and her name is Tonya Thomas. And did I tell you, like, this lady founded the world of virtual assistants? Like, she is so amazing. She's actually the founder of a company called Team Delegate, which provides elite virtual executive assistant support services to seasoned executives. And she has a army of trained executive VAs that provide a comprehensive administrative support to really us time-starved CEOs. Now, Tonya has been featured in some pretty elite magazines. She's been in Entrepreneur Magazine. She's been in Black Enterprise. She's spoken at many women's business events, and she also hosts her own podcast. And I'm really excited because we are going to talk today all thing admin assistant and virtual assistants and executive assistants. And we're going to explain this whole world to you. We're going to break it down so that you can get more time so that you can make some more money. So please join me in welcoming Tonya Thomas to the background. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you, Suzanne?
I am glad that you're here. So tell us, first of all, how you got into this business like 18 years ago, right? Where we were talking offline about dial-up internet and everything. How did you get into this industry of virtual assistants?
Sure. And actually, as I'm looking at the date here on my computer, it's been 20, almost 23 years because it was 2000. That's when my oldest son was born. I'd always had an entrepreneurial spirit, but at the time, my husband and I traveled a lot for his work. He was in the construction industry. So every year, year and a half, we were packing up and moving. And it's like, well, what can I do, moving like this? And this was probably mid 90s. So I kind of tabled it. And then in 2000, I'm home on maternity leave. I'm, I guess, browsing the internet during the small time that I had while my son was asleep. And I came across a training program to be a virtual assistant. And I'm reading it. And then I'm thinking, this fits my background perfectly because I had been, holding administrative assistant positions working with other companies. And then at that time, working with the same company as my husband, because it's kind of like if you can't beat them, join them. So that helped me move my job as well. And so I took the training program and I've been doing it ever since.
I love it. So, one of the questions that entrepreneurs face is, we all feel like we needed an EA yesterday. But sometimes that word EA just has a price tag with it, right?
Mhm.
And some EAs, they make six figures, right? They go to meetings for you, they take notes, they actually make decisions on your behalf, and they can make you a whole lot of money. Tell us about the first thing that an entrepreneur should do when they start to hire a admin. Should they be looking for an EA? Should they be advertising for an admin, looking for an EA? How do you find the right type of help?
I think you first need to obviously identify what your needs are. If you are, for example, maybe you're someone and you just need more clerical support, then maybe an administrative assistant would work for you. If you're someone and you want more of a right-hand person, someone who's going to be able to keep you organized, work proactively with you, then an executive assistant is probably more in line with your needs. And so just deciding what that looks like for you, because I know people are in different stages and sometimes people will say, well, I just need somebody to do these tasks. Then the administrative assistant is for you. But again, if you're wanting someone to be able to support you in a strong way and hold you accountable to, keeping a good schedule and helping you create a schedule to find time for you to be able to work in your zone of genius, then the EA route is probably more in line.
So, Tanya, I'm curious when people are looking for admins and they're hiring them, first of all, it's not an easy position to fill, right? Because an admin, what I found, at least with me, is it's very personal, right? It's somebody that's going to maybe pick up your kids one day, who's going to know everything about you in the entire world. They're going to be checking your email, the good and the bad. Where does it go wrong with hiring help?
I think a lot of times people, again, like I said before, don't really know what it is that they're looking for. So having that information, but then also starts with you and knowing how to delegate effectively. Because sometimes it can be both. I know sometimes if it's not working out, the big thing that people want to do is look at the other person and not in the mirror and take on some of the responsibility of themselves, because a lot of times it's probably a little bit of both. It could be the other person, but then it also probably has something to do with us as well. And so if it's going left and not really working out, then I would say, evaluating, thinking, what could I have done differently? Have I been explaining thoroughly what I need? Have I been communicating? Because it starts there. Communication is huge. Have I been communicating and talking with my assistant to share how I want to be supported? And I think those things go a long way in terms of fortifying the relationship and making sure that it's going in the direction that you want it to go in.
Very good. And so, it's interesting because when someone's starting out, right, and they're looking for their first admin, what is a set of skill? What should they be looking for specifically when they're starting out?
Definitely determining what types of things you want them to do. That's key and important. So taking the time, and I always share with people, keep track of it. When you're thinking about bringing on support and you're not quite sure what it is exactly that you want to delegate, because oftentimes people will say, I just need help, but I don't know where to start, but I just need help. And so keeping a log for maybe a week of 2 weeks is fantastic, but definitely at least for a week of tracking keep a piece of paper on your desk, and then try to be intentional about writing down what you're doing each day. And then at the end of that week, evaluating it and looking at it and determining, okay, what on this list can I release to someone? And then, of course, what can only I do? So it starts there, and then determining those types of things. And then the next thing is deciding, what else do I want in this person? Do I want them to, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of do these tasks, or do I want a higher level person? So determining what the skill set is, the types of tasks that you're looking for, and then deciding, what type of person you want to work with in terms of task or proactiveness and those types of things.
Are there any like red flags when it comes to interviewing a assistant that we should be on the lookout for, that this assistant might actually need their own assistant?
Yeah. Yes, I would definitely say availability, kind of, asking them what their availability is, what are their thoughts around turnaround time, what are their, and you have to come up with these types of questions to be able to ask, to kind of glean their thoughts around quality. What does that look like for them? And asking questions, I guess, too, around what do they think that it looks like to support you? How would they support you? What would that look like? Of course, providing them with the types of things that you're looking for, the tasks, that will be helpful for them to know. But having that, then they should be able to tell you, how they would do those things and handle those things for you. Say, for example, that you need calendar support. They should be able to tell you, how the questions that they would ask you, what information they would need from you to be able to manage your calendar or your inbox. And that'll give you an idea of whether or not the person truly has the skill set and the abilities that you're looking for to be able to support you.
I love that. Very good advice there. And it's interesting because, people often wonder when it comes to getting assistant, what are some things that I should not be asking my assistant to do? Because I remember when I was in college, I worked at Ohio State. In the wintertime, or on breaks, I would go to a temporary service and they would place me. And I remember I was sitting at the front desk and I probably was the admin that needed an admin. And one of the guys I was reporting to, he brings over his coffee cup. He drops it on my desk. He goes, "Go get me some coffee, 2 creams, 1 sugar." And I was like, "Oh, I guess that's my job." Obviously, like I said, I was an admin that needed some more training, right? What are some things that maybe should not be asking our admin to do? Is it okay to ask for coffee? What's appropriate in terms of requests and what's not appropriate?
Again, it comes down to communication because everyone's different. Some people may not really care for doing one thing or someone else loves doing it. And just asking and being transparent when you're deciding what the support is going to look like and what the responsibilities are going to look like, talking with your assistant and asking, are you comfortable with handling this for me? What are your thoughts around handling this for me? Asking open-ended questions around it so you get an opportunity to have them to express their thoughts and feelings. And then, of course, you have to decide on your end whether or not that's a deal breaker for you, because is it something that's super important for you and you've got to have? And then, of course, you make the decision from there whether or not the person is the right person for you. And then something else that I always tell people too, that your assistant can pretty much help you with anything. And when I say that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can do it themselves. It may be that they have to find someone else for you to be able to do it. So oftentimes people don't even think about that. It takes the time and I guess load off of you because you can delegate that. And for example, say you need a strong graphic designer, and maybe your assistant skills aren't strong in that area because all assistants can't do everything that you may need. So they can still help you with that, but because they can do the research to find a good graphic person, do all of the legwork to narrow it down to maybe the top 3 people, get everything that you need, whether that's samples of the person's work and all of that, and have that in a good organized, I guess, document for you to be able to view and make your decision. So they can still help with just about anything that you need to do, even though if it's something they can't actually do themselves.
So let's talk about that. And that was really great advice too. You're right. Not everybody can do everything, right? And I think that was probably one of my mistakes when I first hired assistant is, I wanted to give her everything that I thought was easy for me, but it wasn't necessarily easy for her. Maybe writing creatively and doing a newsletter was not her thing.
Mhm.
And you're right. It's hiring an assistant for the specific tasks that they're going to enjoy doing, that they're going to be good at doing, right? For that. It's very, very important from that standpoint. So let's talk about VAs, right? Because that's an area that I think has been transformed since COVID. It was there before COVID.
Right.
And I think a lot of us went home and some of us stayed home, right? And now that virtual assistant is probably the reality that a lot of us have right now. And first of all, in terms of looking for a VA and also making sure that they're at optimal performance, right? Because they're humans, they're probably working from home. They may have children, they may have a dog. How do we know that we're getting maximum output from a VA? And how do we make sure that we're getting that maximum output from a VA?
I would say, of course, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier in terms of, availability. So you want to ask questions around that, their availability, when they can be available to support you, if they can handle the amount of time that you need. Say, for example, you need 20 hours a week, will they be able to accommodate that? Because I know a lot of times that is a big question for people. They're afraid because they know as a virtual assistant, typically they are supporting more than one person. And so that is a question that people typically want to know because they don't want the person to be overloaded and then they don't have the time to be able to get their work done in the fashion that they want it to be done in. So definitely asking those questions around that. And I think I mentioned earlier too, asking about what's their turnaround time? What's the expectation around that? If I provide you with something, when would you be able to get that back to me? What does that look like for you? So asking those questions to get an understanding and an idea of the person's true availability.
Who is the best candidate to have a virtual assistant?
Someone who doesn't need full-time support, and you're okay, obviously, with the person not being on site. Those are the people who are a good candidate for a virtual assistant, because I always tell people when they ask that, and I'll say too, if you're somebody that needs support Johnny on the spot, when you give something you want it done right then a virtual assistant is most likely not for you. Then you need a full-time person who's going to be, at your beck and call, whenever you need something done for them. So if deciding between those two things, if you're okay with fractional support with not, getting something right away, but in a reasonable amount of time, and you don't need 40 hours, then of course a virtual assistant would work well for you.
I love it. So if you don't have super urgent projects,
Mm-hmm.
having a virtual assistant, and then you can even do a virtual assistant and have them available. It's just being someone being remote, right? They're just
Right.
dedicated to you only. And that's another way around that too, which is really great there. Now, Tonya, I love to ask our guests as we start to close out, if you could leave our audience with any piece of advice. It can be personal or it can be business. What would that piece of advice be?
I'll say business. I know oftentimes as entrepreneurs and small business owners, your plate is full, but definitely taking that time to make sure that you don't burn yourself out. I know oftentimes we think we can do it all, but that eventually does lead to burnout. So just making sure that you're being conscious of how you're spending your time, you're being as productive as possible. And if you need help, then definitely seek out getting some support in your business.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Tonya, so much for joining us today. For our audience to reach out to you, to learn more, to hire a VA, an amazing VA, how do they reach you? How do they find you?
Of course, our website, teamdelegate.com, you can complete the form there and we will get right back with you. I'm also a heavy LinkedIn user. Follow me on LinkedIn, Tonya Thomas. And then our podcast, as you mentioned earlier, it's called Unbottleneck Your Business.
I love that. Unbottleneck your business. Call Tonya today. And so what I'm going to do for you guys that are driving, I'm going to go ahead and put Tonya's contact information in our show notes so that you guys can reach out to her, work with her, and hire that assistant of your dreams. So thank you, Tonya, so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time.